And we're live. This is Mahabali coming to you from Cairo, Egypt. And we are virtually connecting from Digital Pedagogy Lab Institute at UMW. And we have a few folks with us on site. I'll let them introduce themselves, and then the virtual folks will introduce themselves, and we'll start having a conversation.
I'm Jeremy Dean. I'm the Director of Education at Hypothesis. I'm here at DPLI in the design track.
And my name is Remi Holden. I'm an assistant professor of information and learning technologies at the University of Colorado in Denver. And I'm in the design, excuse me, no, you are. There's my mind. I'm in the action track here at DPLI.
Cool. I'm Andrew. I'm a student at Davidson College. I know Kristen, I first came across Hypothesis with Robin DeRosa when she came to Davidson. I wrote some stuff about it. But super excited to be a part of this and hopefully get more students into virtually connecting.
And thank you, Andrew. I'm Alan Levine, coming to you from Strawberry, Arizona. I'm wearing
my
shirt that Jeremy sent me. This is actually, not only do I like the shirt, it's like the best quality T-shirt I've ever gotten. So they not only do great software and great pedagogy, they do awesome T-shirts. And I've been a fan of Hypothesis, not as much an avid user, but out of respect from people like John Udell and Jeremy for his work, and had a good chance to talk with Jeremy when I was working with a prop down in Puerto Rico. And so it's great to, and I've only met Remi through Twitter and his DS106 work. This is the first time I think we've had a conversation, so it's great to see you.
And hi, I'm Helen Dward. I'm in Central Ontario in Canada, and I'm an instructor with the Faculty of Education here. And interested, I've used Hypothesis a little bit, but I'm interested in applying it with some of the Faculty of Education students that I'll be working with this year.
Okay, cool. I guess it's my turn. Hi, everyone. I'm Willy Knutzer. I'm at Stellenbosch University in South Africa, and I am ready to be a convert to this Hypothesis business. So sell me on the idea.
We should annotate this hangout. So I'm going to just say that we're celebrating our first undergrad on a virtual side of a virtually connecting session. So welcome, Andrew. And we hope to have many more undergrads in the future. And Andrew's going to help us with that. We've made him promise to do that already. Yep, I'm on a session, baby. So my daughter isn't asleep because she napped today because we had a long day out. Anyway, so I'm going to ask that, no, okay, she's taking the screen. I'm just going to ask a question while my daughter shows you herself. Oh, the big screen, you won't be able to see it. So I know that Jeremy and Remi just had a Hypothesis Institute at Colorado, and I would have loved to be there because I'm a big fan of Hypothesis, obviously, also. And so I'd like you guys just tell me a little bit more about how that was. And I know you tried to engage the virtual audience also in a couple ways, so I'm interested in how that went also and so on. So if you could just let us know about that, and then I'll open the floor for other questions.
Sure. So first of all, in the future, would love to do more virtually connecting type stuff.
Can't hear you guys. Is it just me? It's not very
No,
loud.
They're good.
Yeah. Okay. This is my first V-connecting session, and I would love for future institutes or future workshops that Hypothesis runs to do more virtual stuff. We made an effort over Twitter to share and include others, but I think we could do more, and want to learn from folks that have those needs and are interested in exploring how to do that more. But the basic principle was to get 40, 50 teachers in a room. It was important to me from the start that it was going to be secondary and higher education teachers. Introduce them to Hypothesis, and then give them the tools and the time to work through thinking about how to leverage the tool for themselves, for whatever their learning goals are. We're lucky that Hypothesis is a pretty flexible tool and can be used in a lot of different ways. And so a good part of the day was kind of real working sessions where people got to explore their needs in relationship to the technology, and then really start to build together and independently how they might make use of it in the classroom.
Yeah, just to add a few other pieces, Jeremy, I want to just thank Hypothesis as an organization for being so open to a pretty emergent collaboration with somebody like, in this case, the University of Colorado Denver, We were able to host it at a really interesting interdisciplinary kind of maker space-ish on our campus called InWorks. We were able to, as Jeremy mentioned, kind of cross a lot of boundaries, bring together K-12 folks and higher ed folks, bring together folks who are in different home disciplines, reach out to over 5 or 6 different higher ed institutions in the throughout the entire Front Range of Colorado. And then, as Jeremy mentioned, to really create an interest-driven learning space where professional learning is reflective of people's curiosities, it's responsive to their challenges, and it's attentive to their authentic needs. It's not some kind of prescriptive, here's the formula, but rather a much more co-constructed opportunity for professional learning. And then to do so with a tool like Hypothesis that allows for much more, personal, creative, and kind of inquiry-oriented work was just really special.
I just want to add that Remi really emceed the part that was, I'm much more of like a dictatorial lecturer type person, and Remi really emceed the part that was like hands-on and getting people to think with post-it notes, small and large, and take apart some ideas and put them back together in useful ways. Just want to say one more thing, which I think was really important about this institute, which is that it began in a session like this. It began on a webinar. There were 6 or 7 people on it. I'd never met Remi before. Based on the conversation, I absolutely knew that I needed to follow up with him one-on-one via email. We did that. We connected. That was really about getting him started with Hypothesis, and then we just stayed in touch. He was able to come to a conference that I hosted, and then he was able to host me at UC Denver. But it began literally on a webinar just like this, a Google Hangout that became a friendship and a professional collegial relationship that then had very physical station in the real world. And a third time now, here.
Right, exactly. All this time.
Yes.
It was very interesting. Remi, you're in the action track, and you've assigned some homework for tonight for the people in the action track. And I tweeted out that maybe they should use Hypothesis to make it a shared homework assignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've encouraged people to, like on Twitter, use the DigPed tag on Hypothesis. I know I've annotated some stuff, Remi annotated some stuff. We held a workshop here yesterday. Maha annotated some stuff, I think I saw. And we had a session yesterday where we were doing, collaborative annotation, flash mobs in our session. So there's a little stream of annotations under the DigPed tag on Hypothesis.
And I think the one piece that I've picked up out of both the presentation that you did yesterday and some of the conversations from yesterday's virtually connecting session is that notion that K-12 isn't necessarily as present in some of these spaces, digital pedagogy spaces. And interesting to see that the connection to commenting and writing about blogs. And blogging is becoming more prevalent and more noticeable in K-12 with teachers thinking out loud and thinking visually or visibly in the open. And it's nice that this can then become another tool beyond just the comment box where we can start supporting each other in what we're trying to do. And I really like that connection that I made from your presentation.
Students using Hypothesis in a high school classroom obviously will be able to continue using it at another institution if they go off to college. So the tool, both the blogging tools and a tool like a Hypothesis, which could be like a micro blogging or embedded blogging tool, is something that they can carry beyond an institution, beyond a classroom.
Have you seen I mean, Remi's idea of the flash mob was kind of an interesting angle. Have you seen any other kind of curious uses you didn't really expect or surprise ways people are using Hypothesis?
Let me just say that it's not my idea, and I should, certainly give credit where credit is due. So, but Alan, thank you. It's. I mean, I heard of it from Paul Allison, and in any case, I think it's popped up in different spaces as a way to, again, just turn this activity into that kind of real-time social collaboration where we all know we're inhabiting some shared document in conversation, not staggered or asynchronous. But yes, we've seen some things.
We've seen so many things. There are a lot of, obscure use cases. I don't want to say they're obscure to push anybody outside of a central place, but there's, a lot of people annotating, putting metadata on pages or putting metadata within texts that when you see it in the public stream isn't something that's like, oh, it's an annotation of an article and I'm a teacher, so it's relevant to me so I can jump on. So it's a little more archaic for the outsider, but people are leveraging the tool for their needs. I mean, the coolest thing for me is when I see somebody, and this happened with another participant from this conference, Tressie McCotton, is that what you say?
Course, yeah.
Where just last week, or I guess maybe it might have been 2 weeks ago now, she just started annotating and tweeting about the DNC convention speeches. And so she was sharing her annotations on Michelle Obama's speech. And that's my favorite thing to see in the stream, or to see somebody share on Twitter, is that somebody got excited, they wanted to get deep into the language of a document, and share it out. So I sort of sit on the fire hose of activity of Hypothesis, looking for moments like that can then become maybe flash mobs, or at least become conversations. People did join Tressie in her annotations of some of those speeches.
Yes, they did. And I think that part of this is that, as Jeremy mentioned a few minutes ago, this tool is so flexible, and its applications within more formal teaching and learning are still really being parsed out right now. And that raises a lot of questions perhaps for us as educators or as designers. How do we maybe even follow the lead of the learners that we have the honor of sharing space with? There are things that have popped up just in my own teaching where things are, oh, they're using it for kind of informal peer-to-peer feedback, or they're using Hypothesis as a way to, even embed time-stamped annotations on YouTube videos that don't allow for time-stamped video annotations, but they're doing so on the title of a YouTube video post. There's weird things where that's cool, that's different, that's a creative expression that allows them to deepen their reading and analysis of a given text or a given experience. And at this point, even in my own professional practice, I just want to go with it. I just want to kind of see where it leads, because it's all still very emergent.
People annotating for house hunting. That's one of the weird things I've seen on the stream.
Wow.
People, I don't know if they're going through Craigslist ads or something, but they're like, visited, rats or something like that, to visit tomorrow 10 a.m. or things like that.
Nice patio.
And you're sitting there looking at the person like, oh, I guess I'm part of your house hunt. But now they have groups to do that. But I can still see the names of groups are sometimes, literally house hunting Seattle or something.
Have you ever seen?
That is so cool.
I was kind of thinking like an optimal participation level. Like, has it ever gone too much that the volume is overwhelming?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, Alan. So I mean, the classic example for me is, again, as an educator with sometimes 8 graduate students in a course, but sometimes, as of this last summer, actually with DS 106, as you know, there were over 30 students in this course. I've got another 36 PhD students in a class this coming fall. That's too much layered discourse in a given reading for comprehensible, pedagogically, I would say, kind of reasonable engagement. And so having, for example, we've talked a lot about smaller private groups, having 30-ish students in 4 groups, where with 6 or 7 or 8 other peers, they can have more in-depth, personable conversation, because at some point the scale becomes overwhelming and the noise is so broad that the signal can't be found.
I hope too that, I think I see this too, anything that's been densely annotated, especially by multiple classrooms. So I actually was looking at something yesterday on Medium, Audrey Waters' article, The Web We Want to Give Our Students. Before we had launched private groups, I know that several classes had annotated that. And when you open it up and you look at the first paragraph, it's got 5 or 6 annotations on that first paragraph, so Hypothesis will give you a darker yellow to let you know that there's more annotations there. And it just kind of becomes like, this is hard to jump in on. So I hope there's stuff we can do with the UI in that regard when things get dense, because hopefully this takes off as something that lots of people are doing online, and you would expect there to be hundreds of annotations on an article in the New York Times or something like that. So we have some work to do. I will say one thing about that Audrey Waters piece that was interesting is that it was very clear, and not that this is a requirement of teachers using the tool, it was pretty clear to me that the people using Hypothesis, at least on that article at first, were totally new to it. And there are some things that one can do, and one probably realizes after annotating a couple articles about how to select text and when to reply instead of creating a new annotation, that help the density a little bit. So, 5 annotations on the first of an article isn't particularly helpful. It's more interesting if somebody to annotate the first time and then you start a conversation that's threaded, and that won't change the UI. You'll just open that annotation and see the conversation. But that's something that needs to be pedagogically addressed in the classroom. There are times when I want to re-annotate a sentence because the other thread is not relevant to my comment. So the UI still needs to support that, and I think that's important. But there is something to be said about user behavior that can engender a cleaner look, but that's hard to instill in the world population.
Well, and not only on the individual, it's almost like what are our social norms or the kind of conventions for how we as a class may annotate our readings this term. And I feel like as an educator, whether we're using the discussion forums in a LMS, which actually is the reason why I jumped out of that to jump into Hypothesis, is I wanted to move away from those kinds of forums, but wherever we might be having conversations and learning with our students or with our peers or with whomever we're engaging in conversation, we begin to develop some social conventions for what makes those conversations more productive. And again, I think that's where the pedagogical work that accompanies our tool use is really so valuable.
Yeah, I've wondered about that. I think I saw. Oh, sorry, I just jumped off. Andrew, go ahead.
It's fine. So I'm really interested in the. Oh man, I'm echoing big time. So I'm interested in the difference between students who are assigned to use Hypothesis, which has been my experience with a lot of use cases, right? You've sold radical pedagogists, and they're like, oh, cool, we're going to do this. They tell a class to use Hypothesis. What is the sort of rate or journey of students that move from being assignees, I guess, to being adoptees? So they adopt it into the way that they see and view and interact with the web. And I'd love to know what that, if that's a journey, how you see that movement.
Yeah, so I'll say that my data from feedback surveys that I give to students and from conversing with students is that most students that seem to use it in the classroom will then continue to, who continue to use it outside the classroom, really do so for private note-taking, more so than public engagement with the web. There are some that do that. I think the public engagement with the web piece, which obviously after having worked for Rat Genius for 2.5 years and Hypothesis for 1.5 years, I've completely drank that Kool-Aid. So anytime I open up anything that's on the web, I turn on an annotation tool and start annotating, more so than tweeting about it or putting it on Facebook or any other kind of social, public, intellectual engagement with content and with other thinkers. And I hope that, and I know that's the case with Remi to some extent, and with Maha, some of our mega users, and I love that. I love when I see that Maha has annotated something, and it always makes me want to go read the article and brings me into that piece, and hopefully brings me into the conversation. That piece is the piece that I'm not sure what the tipping point for that is, when that becomes normal behavior for folks and for students. It's a lot to ask of certain students to suddenly be, I mean, how many of your friends, even at Davidson, are tweeting intellectual comments about the 2016 election or something like that? I don't know. I mean, some maybe, but even them, to convert them to do that through annotation rather than the more mainstream social media platforms. So it's more limited in terms of the public uptake, especially by students. At Genius, there were tons of young people, high school students and college students, that drank that Kool-Aid and may not even have been introduced to the web annotation functionality through a class, but just loved it. It was their form of sort of publicly engaging with their favorite content, not just lyrics. There were speech junkies who would go on and annotate anything the president said. There were legislative junkies. There were all kinds of different people that would come on and start annotating the thing that they were super psyched about.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I survey all of my students about their use both for a formal academic, kind of how do we use Hypothesis when you're in a class? It's for school, it's this formal requirement. but I also survey them about how they then may transform and transition some of those practices into what they're doing in their informal or non-academic activity. And it seems like for a number of them, they do so. Jeremy mentioned a few minutes ago, Tressie, who gave one of our keynotes here at DPLI, was annotating the convention speeches following both the Republican Democratic conventions a few weeks ago. And I noticed that some of the responses that she received to her annotations were from some of my former students. Now, I only knew that because I happen to know their handles, and they didn't know that I was going to even see her here at DPLI. It just happens to be that they care about politics. They noticed that I was getting kind of excited about somebody annotating these speeches, and then they chose to jump in and be in that conversational space. So
it seems to change the performance. Like in a classroom, it's a performance in a way. It must be.
But can I say something for you, Remi? Because I think Remi's done a really cool job of instilling in his students that the work they're doing, I mean, from my perspective, it doesn't look purely academic. I mean, we have people that annotate and say, make a claim and then do an MLA citation at the bottom of your annotation with a link to, some reference to support it. That's an incredibly academic mode of annotating, right? Which would be hard to reproduce, although it's not too different from saying, I think this, here's a link that backs me up on Facebook. But Remi's class and the way that he's always introduced hypothesis from my perspective outside, again, I don't want to suggest anything I'm wrong about, but it's about public engagement. It's about, I'm going to say something about the thing that we're reading, and I want other people to hear it, and I want you to join me in this conversation. And that has an absolute analog in the real world. If there's a speech that goes on or a statement that's made, and you want to say something, you think you have something to contribute, and you want to bring other people in. So that's why I think his students sort of transition seamlessly from, hey, I'm doing this for Remi's class, but really all I'm doing is people I want to talk to are reading something together, and we're having a conversation on top of that text.
And thanks, Jeremy. I mean, I appreciate your outsider perspective is helpful because I think that helps us transition into these kind of impromptu, very creative and expressive opportunities like the flash mobs, where we can say, these people are in a graduate class or an undergraduate class, they're in a formal learning environment, and they've been invited to participate in a conversation where, Andrew, you might jump in, and Maha might jump in, and Autumn might jump in, and the author of the text that we're reading, like we read one of Sean's texts once, who's here facilitating DPLI, we might all then join, and then in that space, it's not going to be formal academic conversation. It's like we were all sitting around in someone's backyard, enjoying each other's company, but grounding that conversation in a text that we find relevant to things that we either care about or our professional practice, whatever that might be.
Alan or Maha?
Yeah.
There's some.
We're arguing over
who's going to ask a question.
We're arguing who's going to talk. Andrew's question about the student uptake, I think it's a matter of time. I think they'll come up with the ideas. It's actually really parallel to what I remember when I was at UMW in 2012. They were just rolling out the UMW domains for the students, and students said, this is kind of interesting, but they didn't know what to do with them. And it wasn't until they had like a meaningful class experience that the ideas began as to what they could do on their own. So I think it's a matter first of going through something that's not just a assignment kind of random exercise. And it won't click for all of them, but it will click for some of them, and they will do things that you don't expect. So I think it's just a matter of time, like the house hunting thing. And since I guess you can annotate almost anything, they're going to start animating, Giphy pages or something like that, and you can't even anticipate what they're going to do. But I trust it will happen for sure.
Well, I was saying in the text thread that Remi is actually annotating this conversation. He's nodding, that's his likes, and then he's making all these gestures with his hands to go with what Jeremy's doing. And I imagine that you teach that way, but it's also really cute. It's almost like you're annotating a conversation in 3D. So. We've got 3 minutes to go, and then we have to get ready for the next conversation. Does anybody want to say anything before we leave? and then I'd like some closing words from Remi and Jeremy, just about how your tracks are going.
Yeah, if I may, I'm interested to find out what your feedback has been from K-12 teachers who are trying this on site. I'm not sure if I heard much of that. I'm getting a bit of garbage over the airwaves, the Africa or something, I don't know. But what sort of feedback have you gotten from teachers actually using this in K through 12, if any?
I mean, I was a kid. I was a high school English teacher. I mean, it's we're really middle school and high school, 13 and above, for students to be signing up and participating. But although we've had higher uptake in the higher education space, we have lots and lots of high school classrooms using it. I mean, obviously, that's a time when. Now, I'm biased. I'm an English teacher, but that's a time when we're starting to really teach kids how to close read textual evidence, and this is a great way to visualize that process. And so I think teachers and students agree that they like that aspect of it. They also talk about the social aspect and leveraging the social for within the class, and students liking to see their classmates' comments and their classmates' questions and their classmates' struggles on top of a text, and sort of feeling more comfortable and confident as readers and learners because they're not alone with the book anymore, in a sense. But do you want to talk a little bit about Joe in Denver?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we've got, I think, a number of K-12 educators, but in this case, again, as Jeremy mentioned, mostly high school educators who are using Hypothesis with their courses in a variety of ways. We've got a nice kind of group of folks that are near the Denver area, the Denver metropolitan area, who are kind of buying in as a kind of peer network into how this might look and what this might look like, not only in an individual school, but in an entire school district. And we've had some support from some of those school administrators around saying this is also valuable for professional learning. So I think you're going to see increasingly not only use amongst K-12 folk, but also sharing that publicly and saying, here's why that's beneficial for my students and also beneficial for me as a professional as I develop new practices. You want to talk about the track real quick? I know time is dwindling.
Time is dwindling. Well, I don't want to, I know that you guys probably have to go too. We're supposed to start at 4:45, so I mean, we can go over a little bit. It's not a big deal.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can talk a little bit about the track. I'm in the design track, and it's run by Amy Collier, and it is some teachers, but a lot of instructional technologists in the room. And it's been a great conversation, especially about thinking about design and the role of the instructional technologist or instructional designer and the teacher as designer and trying to break down those boundaries. I am I'm not interesting, but I am an outlier at this conference, even though I'm a former educator, because I, in certain contexts would be called a name I don't like, which is a vendor. So I work for a specific tool. Is that a face, Alan?
Okay.
You're wearing the T-shirt, man. You're the walking advertisement right there. But I don't like that because I taught at high school and college for 15 years, and yes, I work for a software company. It happens to be a nonprofit one and an open source one, so I think it has a great ethos to be part of the conversations that are happening here and at DPLI and in a number of spaces. But I am a vendor, and there's sometimes there are some interesting tensions that come up. But for me, it's been a great opportunity to acknowledge those tensions. I mean, they're not real tensions. It's mostly me being, sensitive to the fact that, everybody's like, let's look at these terms of service. And I'm happy for people to look at the Hypothesis terms of service because I think they're great. And people have tweeted about that, and we seem to be doing okay. But I guess my point is that it's interesting. There's a number of boundaries being broken down. And for me personally, as somebody who's coming from the tool side, to talk to teachers, and I'm obviously always talking to teachers, but to talk to instructional designers in this really deliberate way, and to just see all the different perspectives, and for them to see mine, and why we might have some shortcomings, is really productive and really helpful. So
yeah,
for everybody, I hope.
Yeah. And so I'm in the action track along with Autumn. We're both hanging out with Audrey Waters. She's been facilitating our learning for the last 3 days now. And it's been this really interesting mix of some very in some respects, challenging and provocative conversations around what it means to be an activist, or to be in activist spaces, or maybe have an activist stance as an educator, as a scholar, perhaps as somebody who works with data, and then the extent to which the actions you take, the people you work with, or perhaps work on behalf of, or work against, those decisions have, of course, ethical dimensions. They have ideological grounding. They have, differential impact. And we've been, in some ways, really kind of trying to unpack a lot of those dynamics in our own work. And we've balanced those conversations with some very deep dives. This afternoon, for example, we were looking at, how you work with large data sets and kind of can scrape websites of their data and can try and find interesting correlations in kind of open data to tomorrow's activities around building bots. We've also had a kind of look at how we architect our own personal cyber infrastructure and the decisions that we make around or where we choose to host information and how, what services we choose to purchase and why. And so it's been a really interesting, track between both its more kind of conceptual, discursive elements and building, I think, our own kind of community of people who are curious and care about these issues, and then again some pretty, heavy tech-oriented, hands-on work that's also been challenging in its own right. I've really been learning a lot. I'm really quite happy to be in the presence of such wise souls. It's really been a pleasure.
This is an awesome institute. There's just so many really interesting folks, and just the hallway conversations, this conversation, like everything. My mind, it's halfway through the week, and my mind is already kind of blown. I'm not sure how I'm gonna finish it out.
We've had amazing facilitation and amazing hosts. Again, I think that the team here, all of the facilitators have just been so gracious in what they provide and what they open up and how they facilitate. It's really lovely.
It is true, though, that I wanted to be in the action track, but Audrey expelled me, so she didn't want to have a vendor in the room. So
there you go.
Somebody should tweet that out. It's not really true.
You're not a vendor. You're a service provider. You're a service provider. You listen to us and stuff.
She's got hypothesis stickers all over her room, so she's kind of sending mixed messages.
And this is gonna sound very strange, but I think it's worth mentioning anyways, in the kind of big picture. I have been so impressed with the food, both at our conference and also in the city of Fredericksburg. And so if you ever make it to Fredericksburg, Virginia, and the University of Mary Washington, there are some great restaurants here. Great restaurants.
Do they have good kosher food or vegetarian food?
Vegetarian, yes.
I know we're running out of time, but so you're enjoying the cafeteria lunch?
The cafeteria lunch could be improved. The restaurants in the area have really surprised me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that statement.
Yeah. Sure, cafeteria food, whatever. But I mean, it's cafeteria, it's fine. The city of Fredericksburg, really, wow. Great restaurants.
And if you need Civil War bullets or guns from the Nazi era and World War II, there are any number of shops on Main Street where you can get this stuff. Really racist statuary for your gardens.
Oh.
So, like multiple shops.
So many reasons to come to Fredericksburg.
Sorry, but that's my walk home from the wonderful restaurants, is by all the antique shops that are interesting. Sorry. Can you edit that part out?
On that very sad note. Thank you so much for making time. I don't know if this is real, what you just said? Anyway, we have to wrap up so that we can get ready for Lee to come in. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you.
And just so you know, we never have vendors on Virtually Connecting, so we don't think of you as vendor. We really don't. Like, it never occurred to me. It never occurred to me to think of it that way.
I never thought of it.
So, thank you, everybody, and I'll see everybody or some other people in a few minutes.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.